Well, hello, and welcome to a tutorial for Creators Kit version 1.3. If you've never used Creators Kit before, this will go through all the basics from start to finish, including all of the new features that came with the 1.3 update. As a side note, if you're watching this just as it releases, there's also going to be a few features from version 1.3.1. That's just because it won't have released just as this video releases, just as 1.3 releases, but it'll be probably in your hands within the next month or so. Okay, so let's start with the very basics of Creators Kit. Where are you going to find all the features that this plugin has to offer? Let's start with the configuration panel. To download it, you want to go to the plugin hub, you want to search Creators Kit, and it'll be at the top here. You just have to hit the install button. Once you've done that, you'll find Creators Kit in your main configuration menu. This is going to be a very important place for changing your keybinds, managing a lot of the different features that the plugin has to offer. The other place is the side panel, Creators Kit side panel, and this is the place that we're going to be starting. So let's start with something really basic. Let's just add an object to our scene. I can hit the Add Object button, and I'm going to use our hotkeys to place it, move it, rotate it, and modify it. So let's find some of our basic hotkeys for how to modify this object. It's going to be in our scene section right here. So the spawn hotkey would be Insert, Set Location would be Home, Rotate would be Delete, and End. So I'm just going to point at a place in the scene, and I'm going to hit Home. There we go. There's our first object. By default, an object will be model ID 7699, which is a crate. Think of an object as a bit of matter that can be molded into different shapes, different models. The model is the actual 3D structure, like a crate or a player or this hand, whereas the object itself is the container for the model. You can give any given object different models. As you can see here, I'm scrolling through different model IDs, and it's changing to the appropriate model taken from the cache. You can also give it different animations if the model has animations allowed. So some ways that we can pick different models is we can go around the scene and right-click different things, or more typically right-click their tiles. So let's say I want to get this tree. I can right-click its tile and hit Store Game Object. Now I can change from choosing an individual model ID to going Custom. This will have a list of all the different objects that we've stored or made, or all the different models we've stored or made, which I'll show you how to make models later. So currently, as you can see, it's selected our tree, our game object, as the current model. Now I can move this around again using the Home key. I can spawn and despawn it using the Insert key by default. Once again, these can be changed in the config menu. What else can I do? Let's show you. Now sometimes you get a little bit of a glitch, like right here. You can see that this tree is clipping with the surrounding tiles. That's because its radius is larger than one tile. Radius of one tile works well with radius of 60 works well with an object with a model that occupies only one tile, like the player or like the crate we saw earlier. Once you get larger models, the radius will need to be adjusted. So what I'll do is I'll just keep increasing the radius, there you go, until it fully shows. Something else I can do is I can right-click players or even myself and store them. So let's store myself, and you can see in our custom object menu, I have the local player. And I can give the local player an animation if I so choose. So how are we going to find animations? What we're going to do is we're going to open up our debug menu using the page down hotkey. Page down, you can see it now draws an overlay across anything that we have selected here. So players like myself now have an overlay. If I go over here, I can see all these players have overlays too. which describes the current animation and the current pose animation. So the pose animation, most typical one, let's change what we're holding to nothing. The most typical pose animation is 808. So if I enter 808, you can see our object now has the 808 animation. I can also choose other things with our debug menu. As you can see, currently I have NPCs selected, which gives an overlay over the NPCs, giving their NPC ID, their animation, and their pose animation. I can also choose ground objects for all the little pieces of rubble and grass that you see everywhere. I can choose game objects for all the kinds of structures that you interact with. I can choose, let's see, game object, wall objects, pretty self-explanatory. And there's decorative objects and projectiles as well. Okay, so that's how I got an animation for my character here. Once again, we can go around, we can right-click other players. Let's right-click, oh, that player just disappeared. Let's right-click this player and store them. And they'll appear underneath our custom model menu. I can change the animation to whatever I want, right? Different animations, let's say I wanted to play a dance animation. Let's see, dance. You can see 866 is the dance animation, 866, and our object will loop through that dance. Now for simplicity, or for clarification, especially once you start to add many objects to the scene, I'm going to name this object as human. I'm also just going to set the radius back to 1 tile, as that'll help. Sometimes if you set it too high, it'll start clipping with surrounding objects. Let's see what else we can do with this human. Oh yes, before I go there, other ways that you can find models to apply to your object. Let's start with RuneMonk. This is a very handy website, which I'll have linked below, which can find you any NPC you'd like, as well as any object. So if I go to the object section, and I enter, let's enter bench, let's see what it gives us. You can find all these different types of benches that we can pick to add to our scene. So this is a pretty nice bench. I'm going to go to the data section, and I'm going to find the object models. And I'm going to copy and paste this. Let's add a different object. Let's paste the model ID and hit home to add it to our scene. And again, just because I can see a bit of clipping here, I'm going to set the radius a little bit higher. There we go. We've added a bench. We can also find NPCs. So, okay, how about we find Honest Jim, just because he's on my mind at this moment. You can see that he is composed of many different models put together, as well as we're also given his regular animations, his standing or pose animation, his walking animation, and so on. So we can't enter in a single model ID, or we can only enter in a single model ID here in the side panel. But what we can do is we can load a model from the cache and have it all put together for us. Because when you look at many different models, including the player or different NPCs, they're often composed of multiple models put together. For example, the wizard's hat is a different model, the beard is a different model, the face is, the torso, the arms, the hands, the amulet of magic. These are all different models that the game has mashed together. So rather than finding the individual models and trying to haphazardly put them together, we're going to open up our toolbox. And we're going to go to the model organizer. You notice that there's a lot of different tabs here. We're going to go through them one by one, so don't get too confused. We're just going to start with the model organizer. Already you can see that we have here all the custom models that we put down in our drop-down menu by storing them through the world. See our game object, local player, and the one player that we picked up. You can find them all here. We can change the name. So if I wanted this to be human 2, you can see that it updates the drop-down menu. Again, this is more just one of those things that you change for clarity for yourself as you're dealing with larger and larger projects. But let's go to our cache searcher. Once again, I want to find Honest Jim. Rather than entering in a model ID, I'm going to take his NPC ID, 1816, copy and paste that into our cache searcher, and hit Add Custom Model. You can see a custom model is taken from the cache and placed in our drop-down menu. So now if I go and change human to Honest Jim, there we go. There he is. We can do the same for different objects. So I'm going to close this out now. Oh, just very quickly. Let's just give him his intended default standing or pose animation. Looks like a pretty regular 808. Yeah, who knows why Jagex does some of the things they do. Okay, let's close RuneMonk, and let's go to another place where we can find different models and objects. This is the minimal OSRS item database. So you can do very similar things here. Let's say I want to find a barbarian. Man, this is the classic barbarian. I'm going to take this. So once again, you can see that the barbarian is composed of many different models. So we need to get the plugin to mash all these models together based on the NPC ID 1028. Go back to open our toolbox, go to our cache searcher, and enter that in. Now we should have our barbarian guard in our drop-down menu. That's classic. I really love that. That's amazing. We can also search objects. So for example, if I wanted a spirit tree, I could find that in here as well. Let's see. And again, spirit tree, this one, let's not choose that one. Let's choose this one here. So this one is composed of two different models. So I'm just going to take the object ID, open up our cache searcher, enter that in, search by object ID, add custom model, and our spirit tree pops up right there. So let me just add another object, swap to our custom objects, add the spirit tree, and hit home to place him right there. And let's just set our radius to stop him from clipping to the ground. You'll notice that there's always going to be clipping artifacts. That's just kind of the nature of how RuneLite allows you to spawn objects. That's just something that you unfortunately have to record around. Okay, so that is adding custom objects. That is using the cache searcher. What else can we do? Well, we can program. We can lightly program our objects, I should say. So first, before we get there, let's quickly jump into our Oculus Orb mode by pressing the Page Up button by default. Page Up, and then we can use WASD to move around, R and F to move up and down, and we can hold Shift to move slower. We can also set the orb speed. So if I want to set to more like a walk speed, I could enter in 4, and you can see how slowly we move now. Should be about walk speed. Oh, that's running. Pretty close to it. 5 might be the other way. In Creator's Kit version 1.3.1, you can also hit Control S to quickly set the orb speed. 36 is default. So you can see about 5 is walk, 9 is run. I'm just going to set it to default. There we go. And we can also hit Page Up again to toggle Oculus Orb mode off. We also have a couple rotation features, which are probably unset by default. I'm going to use the auto rotate left, so hold Alt and hit left to slowly rotate around. And I can increase the speed or decrease it. You'll notice that as I'm modifying this scene, as I am playing with Creator's Kit here, I'm often right-clicking the scene again to shift the focus from whatever I'm doing here back to the scene. Because if I hit home right now, it's not going to move our bench. Let me just change that to bench for clarity. It's not going to move our bench because my focus is currently on this little text box. So I'll right-click the scene, bring my focus back to the environment, and once again we're moving our actual objects. You'll also notice that the hotkeys only apply to the currently selected object. So you can see I can select the object from here just by clicking any of the components for that object. This is actually supposed to be tree. 1 second. This is bench. See, this is why it's good standard to start naming your objects. Very helpful for keeping organized. I'm going to stop rotating myself just by hitting the same key. And you can also rotate upwards or downwards, up to you. And again, just stop that by hitting the same hotkey again. We can also rotate our objects in the scene using the delete and end keys by default. So it will rotate, by default it will rotate by 90 degrees if we look under the scene. I currently have it set to 45 degrees. I find that pretty useful for most of the functions I need it for. But you can also do by 90 degrees or by 180 degrees. And again, that's delete and end keys to rotate clockwise and counterclockwise, respectively. Okay, that's hotkeys. That's our Oculus Orb. I'm just going to get back into Oculus Orb mode with page up so I can start moving around again. Let's program. Okay, let's first select our human model, and I'm going to make sure that my object path overlay is checked off. My overlay menu is currently on, as you can see. I can add steps to the scene by pressing the Alt-A hotkey. So Alt-A. 1 second. What I currently... Oh, that's me. Okay, I'm confusing myself. I can use the Alt-A hotkeys to add steps to our scene. And if I hit Control-A to add steps to our scene. If I hit Control-D and hover over a tile that has a step on it, I'll remove that step from the equation. And I can also hit Control-C to clear all steps. So again, Control-A to add a couple steps to the scene. All of these you can find underneath the programmer. Then I can hit Control-Space to play the program for the selected object. Control-Space, and look at that. He's walking very strangely. Perhaps we need to set a walk animation to him. So let's go to our toolbox, and let's go to the programmer. Here we can see all the objects that we've added and the animations we've given them. So I'm going to set the active animation to 819. That's a very standard walk animation for a human. I'm going to leave the speed at 1. Usually don't have to touch the turn speed. Usually don't have to touch the movement type, although if you want to, well, we'll get that into a second. I'm going to go back to our hotkey menu within our config, and I'm going to hit Control-R to reset the program for the selected object. I'm also just going to rotate him so that he starts off facing the right direction. Hit Control-Space to play, Control-Space to pause, Control-Space to play, Control-Space to pause, Control-R to reset. There you go. You'll notice that he'll play his walk animation when he's moving. He'll play his pose animation when he's stopped. You can also have multiple objects going at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this object. You can see it duplicates him as well as the path that we gave him. So I'm just going to hit Control-C to clear his path, Control-A to set a new path, Control-A once again. I can hit Control-Space, but it'll only play the currently selected object. Rather, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control-End. Control-End to pause and play all objects. The same button will stop, just like Control-Space, Control-End, and Control-Home to reset all programs for all objects. As you can see, I duplicated this object by hitting the Duplicate button. You can also minimize these objects if that helps clean things up. You can also delete objects if you no longer need them, and they'll be removed from your scene. Say I don't want this tree anymore, deleted. Okay, that's programming in a nutshell. Yes, you'll notice that there's a smart path finding system that will prevent you from walking into places that you're not supposed to. This program can bug out. I am working on some fixes to try and make it work a little cleaner, but it works for the most part. you can see that I tried to add a step that took me into this tree here, but this tree is impassable terrain, like your character can't normally walk through there. And therefore, with the currently set movement type, your object can't walk there either. So I'm just going to delete that step with Control D, and there you go. Our path is back where it should be. I'm also just going to put him in a little loop, because what we're going to do is we're going to, actually let's put him in a smaller loop so it doesn't take so long. I'm going to go back to our program for our human one. Let's hit loop. Go back, and we can see that he starts walking in a pretty normal loop. We can also change our movement type. So let's go to our first human here. In fact, just for clarity, let's store James over here and change it around. So we have James and we have Barbarian. James, I'm going to, let's say I do want you to walk through this tree, for example. I want you to walk straight through it. You're going to naturally pathfind around it, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to go to James, and I'm going to change his movement type to Ghost. As you can see, Ghost movement type will now just disregard all boundaries, and will make him walk right through the tree space. What else you can do is you can re-roll the color of the path. The path color is just randomized, and sometimes it comes out with a fairly difficult to see color. So you can just re-randomize it to make it a little clearer for when you're creating especially larger programs. Okay, what else you can do? Let's just reset. I'm just going to clear James's path, and I'm going to give him the dance animation again. I'm going to move him over here. I'm going to duplicate him a couple times. As you can see, as I duplicate him, his animations aren't lined up, which is great sometimes, not so great other times. What I can do is I can go back to our programmer and hit sync all idles. Well, sync shown idles will sync all of the idle animations of all the currently showing objects. Sync all idles will sync all objects that you've added to the scene. So I'm going to hit sync idles, and there you go. They're now all in sync. Okay, so that's the very basics of programming, of adding and manipulating objects. We're going to move now to our model manager, our object manager, which is this tab right over here. This is useful for dealing with much larger scenes with a lot more objects going on at the same time. This is pretty much a folder system for helping to keep track of all of the objects you've added. So as you can see, we always start out with a master folder. This is a folder that can't be deleted. This is the folder on which all of your other folders are going to settle. We have an add object here, an add object button here, just like we have on the side panel, and the function is exactly the same. It adds an object to the manager, which we can add to the scene. Again, default will be a crate. We can manipulate it with, rotate it with complete and end. We can move it around using home. We can spawn and despawn it using insert. The advantage here is that we can place it underneath a different folder. So let's say I wanted to create a folder for crates. I'm just going to triple click this and change the folder name to crates. I added the folder using the plus button here, and I'm going to put this object, this crate, underneath our crate folder. And I'm just going to rename it, for clarity, to crate. What else I'm going to do, I'm just going to minimize these because I don't really want to deal with them right now. I'm going to add some more crate objects. Let's see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to name it crate and then duplicate it so that they're all named crate. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is I want these crates in the side panel to be moved to our manager so that we can organize them into folders. What I can do is I can select a folder. As you can see, the currently selected folder is the folder crate, which I'm going to rename to crates for clarity. And I'm going to hit the switch this object between the manager and the side panel button, which is not very cleanly named. I'm going to hit that for all of these, and you'll see that those crate objects jump into the manager underneath the folder that we currently have selected. So if I add, let's say I click the master folder. Now let's say I add a new folder. let's change this folder name to humans. And I add so I currently have the humans folder selected. I'm going to add James and the let's add the Jameses all here. You can see they all show up underneath the currently selected folder humans. I can also move this folder around. I can place this folder underneath other folders, all the standard stuff that you would expect from a good tree. I can also add further subfolders to these folders. So let's say I want to move James into this subfolder here, James subfolder. There you go. You can see as I click the different folders or the different objects, as I click the different folders, it will show only those objects that are in that folder. Or if I click an object, it'll show all the objects in the folder it's in. And once again, you can move these around as you so please. You can also delete the currently selected folder or the currently selected object. I can hit delete to delete James 2 here. Or if I select the James subfolder, let's just add a couple more Jameses. If I delete the currently selected folder, James subfolder, it'll delete all the objects underneath it. And then I can clear all the objects and folders from everything as well. And then I'll just clean house here. Okay, that is the... Oh, right, yes. The other important feature about this, let's say I can hit this button up here to send all objects from the side panel into the currently selected folder in the manager. So I could send it to the master folder, but I'm just going to create a subfolder, trees. Maybe let's add a couple tree objects. Store that, find it down here. Let's set that radius, duplicate, hit home to place it, and to rotate, and delete to rotate, I should say. Home to place, duplicate, home to place, delete a couple times to rotate it. Yes, and let's send all of the objects in the side panel into the manager. And as you can see, all the objects are now under the folder that we had selected. And once again, I can hit this to send them all back. There you go. Okay, let's now take these objects here. I'm going to put these trees back in our side panel, back in our manager. Let's say I want to save this setup. I like having these trees here. I like having the workbench. I like having the barbarian hanging around. What I can do is I can save the setup. So what we're going to do, hit save setup. I'm going to save it as barbarian trees. Now let's say I clear this setup. Let's say I clear everything here. Clear everything from the manager and clear everything from the side panel. Open up our toolkit, our toolbox again. Load our setup. Let's load what we had just saved. As you can see, as I cleared it, everything's gone, but we can reload it. And it's all back again. So very convenient, especially once you've finished with a project and you want to close out your client. You want to, I don't know, go do something else with your life. Very handy feature to very quickly bring things back. There's another handy feature called the Auto-Setup. Let's see. Auto-Setup. So what we can do here, if we enable Auto-Setup, we can find the path to the JSON file that we just saved. You'll have to find it in the creatorskit-setups folder within the RuneLite directory, which I'll put a short little guide on how to do that in the description down below. But pretty much, you just have to enter in that path, which is going to look something like C users gnome runelite creators kit, something like that. Oh, barbarian trees. Gonna look something like that, which you just have to enter that in. Then every time that you open the client, it will automatically find this setup that we've created and respawn it. This is very useful, especially if you're trying to decorate your POH, for example, so that you don't have to manually reload a setup when you log in. Every time you log in, the setup will automatically spawn. Okay, let's see. That is our manager. We've gone through a programmer. We've gone through our model organizer. Let's go to our model Anvil. So among the many features of Creator's Kit is the ability to take models from the cache and merge them together. I'm going to show you a very basic version of this. Let's open up our toolbox and let's hit the add button. We're going to add a single model. So each of these boxes that we add is a single model that we're going to take and mash together. I'm going to add 2 crates. That's the model ID 7699. And well, let's start with 1 crate. What happens if I forge this? Oh, let's change the name. So crate mash. I'm going to hit forge. I'm going to add another object and apply the new model that we just created, the new custom model, the crate mash. As you can see, it's a crate as expected. Now what happens if I add another model to this crate? I'm going to, I'm going to add another crate and I'm going to offset it by 1 tile in the X direction. So that's in the east direction. I'm going to hit forge and set to automatically apply this new model to the currently selected object. As you can see, another crate just got added. And when I move this crate mash around, it moves all those models together because they're now effectively one single model. I'm also just going to set the radius. I'm just going to set it to 200 just so it looks clean. See, the center is the center of this object is still on this location right here. So you can see as I rotate it, that's what it looks like. I can do a lot of other things with this too. I can move it 1 in the Y direction. As you can see, it's now 1 further in the X and Y directions. I can move it up once. There you go. Now it's floating above. I can add multiple other models to this crate mash. I'm going to set that back. Add another crate in the -1 direction. Hit forge and set. And there you go. You can also, let's go through each of the components of the models that we're adding. So first off, as you can see, the model ID, the single model ID that we're adding, we can give it a name. So I'll call this crate center because it's our center crate. I'll call this crate right and crate left. Again, that's more just for clarification purposes for yourself. If you happen to be adding 50 different models all together into a single object, into a single model. You can also duplicate and delete it, which function as you'd expect. You can translate by 1 full tile in the X, Y, or Z direction. You can also translate by a subtile, 1/128th of a tile. If I take our crate right and I move it, oh, no, not there. And I move it 64 spaces, let's put it back at center, but move it 64 subtiles to the east direction, hit forge and set. You can see it's now only half a tile away from the initial tile. 128 would be 1 full tile, effectively the same as just increasing this by 1. In version 1.3.1, you can also just right-click these to reset them to their default values. And again, I can modify it in the subtile Y direction. So as you can see, it's not quite 1 full tile. Further higher in the north direction than the origin. I can also scale these models using the scale in the X, Y, and Z. So let's scale our center crate by double. There we go. Now it's twice as high, twice as wide, twice as long. You can also just do 1 dimension. So if I right-click that to reset it, I now just have a very a very long crate. I can also, right, so let's just reset that to default. Let's reset that. Let's take our right crate and let's see. Let's double it in the X, Y, and Z direction. You'll notice that it is now further than one tile away because the tile translations that we use here translate relative to the size of the model that we've added. So really, one tile in this case, when doubled in the X direction, is now effectively 2 tiles away. You can also rotate them by 90, 80, or 90, 180, or 270 degrees. And you can also invert them, which I'm not going to go into great depth of how or why you would do this. It's mostly for me for very specific purposes. Yeah, I'll quickly show you what that's all about. Might as well. This is a good opportunity to demonstrate something else as well. Let's go to our model organizer, and let's say first off, this is really messy. We've created a lot of these different crate meshes, and maybe we need to get rid of some of them. So I'm just going to clear all unused models, and there we go. Anything that currently isn't being used by an object is now destroyed. That helps clean up our menu a little bit so that there's not so many objects we have to choose between. This is also, I believe this is our tree. I'm going to guess it was our tree. And I'm going to send this tree to the Anvil. So you can take these custom models that you've created and you can send them to the Anvil as well. So this is our tree, which has an ID of 1637. If I hit, well, let's just change this name to tree. There you go. It looks like a pretty standard tree because I haven't made any modifications. Let's invert that. And we're also going to have to reverse scale in the X or Y direction. Actually, let's reverse scale in the Z direction. That's going to make it a lot more obvious what's happening. I'm also going to translate it in the Z direction as well. Translate it up. We'll see why in a second. And, well, should have gone the opposite direction because everything's inverted. You can now see that we've inverted all of the faces on our tree. It is now upside down. Inversion, very, very specific uses. You probably won't need to make use of it. Let's do something else kind of fun. Let's take our player character and send him to the Anvil. All right. Look at what just happened. It took all of the different components of our player and it separated him into all his individual models. So we have our jaw model, our hands, our hair, and a bunch of items which represent the blue wizard robes, hat, and the sandals, and the amulet of magic. So let's first of all, let's find out which one is our hat. Let's just start modifying things, see what happens. That was the arms. Let's see, that was the torso. That's the hat. There we go. Let's take the hat and let's increase its scale by double. And we're also going to have to drop it a little bit. I'm going to drop it by 64 and see what happens. There we go. Now our hat is double in scale. Let's make it attached to him just a little bit better. Let's see. Further down in the Z direction, let's go minus 100. Forge and set. It's a little too low, maybe minus 90? Minus 90. Perfect. It's also a little too forward, so let's increase its Y subtile. It's a little too much. Perfect. And maybe a little more down. Beautiful. You notice that the animation system, when we program him, let's give him an 808 animation. It'll do its best to apply whatever animation it is that they have. So if I create a quick program, maybe we should give him a walk animation. 819. Hit Control Space to play. There you go. Looks fairly normal besides the excessively large hat. Okay, yes, so you can take any sort of you can take pretty much any object from the environment and send it to the Anvil. So let's just quickly clear this. You can take, let's say, you can take this player, send him to the Anvil, forge and set. There you go. It's an alternative to simply storing the player if you want to modify them. And that will become a little more relevant when we start to change colors. This player is a great sample just because very, very vivid colors. Let's use our color swapper. So the way that RuneScape uses its colors is it often reuses models, but changes some of the colors on them just to, I don't know, save space or whatever. What we can do is we can change all of the colors of a given color, all of the polys of a given color to a different color. So if I take, let's see, let's try and find the hood here. Nope. Not that. There we go. If we take this hood and we open up our color swapper, we can see that we have the ability to change what colors it's recoloring to. You'll notice that it's already done this because the purple cape by default is, well, whatever this is. It's quite the interesting default. I wonder, no, it wouldn't be for the attack hood because there's a lot of green. Well, anyways, those are the default colors, but we can swap them. So we can change all of the green to, let's say, a teal. Hit forge and set. Nice. Let's change all the red to a purple. There we go. That's the basics of a color swapper. We can also take these colors. So you notice, first of all, that it does a one-to-one translation. So whatever color was green, it'll now change to teal. Whatever color was red, it'll now change to purple. Let's do the same for the skin. Let's give, sure, blue skin. There we go. Now we can take all of these color swaps that we've done and we can copy them and paste them to the other models in the same object. So you can copy and paste from here, or you can copy and paste from here. So if I copy, let's just change that name to hood. Again, just for clarification, copy those colors. And I'm going to paste them to, let's just paste them to everything, see what happens. So what I'm expecting to happen is that all of these skin should change to a, oh dear, maybe I copied the wrong thing. Oh, I absolutely copied the wrong thing. That was not the hood. I'm clearly very good at this. This was the hood. Let's give the blue skin back. I'm just gonna clear all the recolors so far by hitting the clear button. Copy the ones for the hood and paste on all the other. There we go. As you can see, all the skin is converted to a blue color. I also cleared all the recolors, so the grayscale is changed back to its default white value as well. That is recoloring in a nutshell. What else can we do here? Yeah, so I showed you that we can get these models by right-clicking different objects or NPCs or characters from around the scene and hitting Anvil. You can also, just like I showed you how to use the model organizer to add custom models, we can load those custom models directly into our model Anvil as well. So let's say I don't have someone in my scene. Let's see. Let's search by NPC ID. Who's ID 1000? That's a really generic result. Let's choose 1005. Not very lucky. There we go. Let's say I want to choose this guard. We could add all of these individual models one at a time to the Anvil just by going add 4220 as the first model, and so on and so forth. Or we can use the cache searcher to very quickly take the NPC ID. So again, these are model IDs. Let's take the NPC ID and add it into our cache searcher. And instead of the model organizer adding it directly as a custom model that we can check from the drop-down menu, it'll add all of the different models that compose of this guard into our Anvil so we can further modify it. So again, this should just be the default Fremnik looking guard. And there we go. We can now modify him from here as we so choose. Sure, just for demonstration's sake, let's just double whatever this component is. You know, has a very large and very high up their face. Okay, let's reset that because, yeah, it's not so great. Now, sometimes, let's say I want to make this singular guard here twice the size in every dimension. So I can manually enter 256 into every single X, Y, and Z scale boxes, but that gets pretty tedious pretty quick. So let's quickly reset that. Rather, I can use the group transformer to do most of the work for me. So first off, I have to make sure I have the right group selected. You'll notice that all of these have already been given a group. 8 by default is the group for NPCs, 9 is the default for players, and 1 is the default for everything else. So if I want to modify anything in group 8, I can change that to 8, and I can use the adjuster or the setter functions. Let's just move ourselves to a bit better positioning to see all this at once. So the adjuster will change the translation or the scale or the rotation for all of these objects by the amount we enter. So if I want the entire model to rotate by 90 degrees, I can hit that. As you can see, 90 degrees is now checked off for each of the models, and if I forge and set, he is now rotated by 90 degrees. If I hit 90 degrees again, it'll rotate all of the objects in group 8 another 90 degrees. As you can see, it's now all 180. Forge and set, there we go, rotated 180 degrees. Let's say I take this off the face. Actually, let's put that on the face. Let's choose whatever this is. Let's say I put this to group 1. Now if I hit the rotate adjust by 90 degrees, it'll rotate everything except what wasn't in that group. So as you can see, it looks like the beard didn't rotate with the rest. Let's put that back to normal. The set function, let's see. The setter functions will set all the values to the value entered. So if I set everything to 90 degrees, instead of adjusting by 90 degrees, it'll set to 90 degrees. There you go. Let's put this guy back in group 8, just because he's really struggling. Let's set everything to 0. Back to normal. You can do the same for translation. So if I want to increase the translation by one full tile in the X direction, I can do so. If I want to set it to 5, there we go. And he's disappeared over into the bank over here. Let's go back. If I set it all back to 0, there you go. He's back to normal. That is the adjust and setter group functions. You'll also notice, if we look at our character closely, you notice that the lighting on him is kind of harsh for an NPC. Players and NPCs typically run by a slightly different lighting system than objects. If you look at these trees here, you can see that's quite a harsh, drastic lighting system. Whereas my player, it's much more subtle, much more faint. I can change the lighting system to be actor lighting. So this is appropriate for most NPCs and players. Forge and set, you can see he's now lit a little more normally. I can also change him to no lighting, which will just look very strange. Let's put him back to actor lighting. Now, one unique feature of some models when you mash them together is that there's a certain priority ordering that can get confused when you're not using them for their originally intended purposes. So the greatest example I have of this is, let's just add a new object, change its radius to 800, and load. So first of all, let me just clear that. Let's load something I've previously built. I'm going to load this boat here. And if we look at this boat, you can see it is composed of a lot of different models, all mashed together. Quite a few. If I forge and, let's just change the lighting, forge and set that. So it's a lot of different models composed together. The shields are different models, each tile is a different model, the spires are separate models, the sail's a different model. All of these all of these have been mashed together into one single model. But their internal rendering order isn't quite right. If we take a look at this spire, as we slowly rotate our camera, you can see it's kind of disappeared behind the sail. It's rendering behind these benches and shields as well. There's some sort of non-Euclidean trickery going on here. And that's because the internal priority system was not designed to have all of these models mashed together as one single model. What you can do is you can hit the priority button, and this resets everything's priority to 0, so that everything is rendered with the same priority. And this, there you go. That's fixed it for the most part. As you can see, there's still a little bit of glitching here and there with these shields, because realistically, the shields should have higher rendering order than the wall they're beside. But you'd have to do that manually, and that would be a very painful process to go through to define which polys need to be ordered higher than the others. So for now, there's this brute force method of checking off priority. I don't recommend doing this unless you get a situation like this where it's very clearly a messed up rendering order within the model that you've created. As I just showed, you can load and save models that you've constructed within your Anvil. So if I go back to our little guard over here, let's find him. And I send him back to the Anvil. I think I named him Tree, which is probably a mistake. Call him Barbarian. And let's just delete that. Let's forge and set this guy with with actor lighting to make sure it's our correct guy. There he is. I can save this so that I can get him back later. So Barbarian, save. If I now clear it, I can load him, Barbarian, and all of the different models that he's composed of will all be brought back here. I can also load him directly as a custom model, which will make him immediately available within our drop-down menu of custom models. So if I load custom model, Barbarian, you can see he's shown up at the bottom here and will be at the bottom of our drop-down. So that, in short, well, maybe a little more in long, and that is our model Anvil. Now, before I go to our final section, I think we're ready to go to our final section. Let's go to our Transmogger. So, we are able to transform our player into different models that we've created or that we've taken from the environment. How we're going to do this is, first off, we're going to disable our entity. Use the entity hider plugin to hide the local players. You can see I have local player checked off. And I'm going to go to Creator's Kit. And I'm going to enable transmogrification. Now what I want is to give my character a new look. Let's go and find someone. Let's see. We'll go over and let's find Romeo, because he's a good candidate. He's normally a character that you can't take any of his look normally. Let's just make sure our entity hider's cooperating with us. Let's well, let's directly transmog into him. So you can enable transmog right-click to be able to simply right-click any character or model around the environment and hit transmog, and it'll automatically apply it as your transmog. Once again, I'm going to disable entity rendering using the entity hider plugin, and there we go. I am now transformed into Romeo here, and I can walk around as Romeo as well. It'll take all the animations that currently apply to my real player character and apply them to my new model. Now if I go over here, there's a lot more we can do with our transmog system. We can alter which animations play under different circumstances. So currently 808 is the default idle animation for my player. If I change that, first off, I can use different animation swap systems. Player will just copy all my real animations to my new character. I can use modified. Modified will copy all the animations that my real character is using, except for the ones that we add here. So if I want to change it so that my pose animation is 866, there we go. Whenever I stop moving now, I now automatically dance. I can also change our walk animation, our turn animations, our run animation. So whatever 867 is, or 868 is, we're now going to be playing them as we walk and run. So there we go. That's a fantastic choice. Our run is now this. And what's our walk? Our walk looks like a woodcutting action. We can also do custom, which will only play animations that we've entered into our transmogger. So if I reset this to -1, if I reset that to -1, you see no animation plays. It's not copying any of my real player animations. We can also set it to none, which is it's just supposed to play no animations at all. Clearly that's not the case though. Okay, when are some of these a little more handy? Let's say I want to be a dog. Let's go find ourselves a dog. Let's go run and find ourselves a dog. Disable entity hider. Should be a stray dog around here somewhere. Let's see. Well, it's not great luck. There he is. Let's right-click him and transmog. There we go. First off, you can see that something very wrong is going on. It's currently playing a human animation on a dog, but it's not appropriate for the dog. What we want is the dog's animation. So pose animation 4777. So let's change this to 4777. There we go. And I'm gonna guess that the next animation is a walk animation. Nope. It's 4773. Walk is 4773. So now whenever my real player plays a walk animation, the transmog that I've added will play its walk animation as well. Whenever my player plays an idle animation, the transmog will play its idle animation. And again, we'll just use entity hider to play only my transmog, show only my transmog. I'm also just going to disable our debug menu with page down because that's a little bit distracting. There we go. What you can also do is you can set a bunch of very specific transmog options. Let's just change ourselves back to a more normal character. I'm going to go to our model organizer and I'm going to apply Romeo as our transmog. There we go. Transmog is now Romeo, and he's playing dog animations, which we don't want. Change that back to player. Let's just reset these to -1. Let's say that whenever Romeo, whenever I play the dance emote, instead I want Romeo to spin. So spin animation is 2107, dance animation is 866. So I'm going to add an additional swap. I'm going to swap out 866, the dance animation, and swap in 2107, the spin animation. Now whenever I dance, oops, I have to make sure I have modified. Whenever I dance, it'll now spin. Pretty beautiful. A couple other quick features: you can remove the custom swaps that you've added. You can reset all of these. So if I've added these, hit reset, it's all back to -1. I can add defaults, which will just fill in regular player animations, which is just a small convenience option. You can also auto-transmog, just like you could auto-setup earlier. So if you enable auto-transmog and enter in the path of the transmog that you saved, well, maybe we should save a transmog. So I'm going to reset all those. I want to save it so that, let's see, our idle animation is now 866, our walk is 867, and our run is 870. So now when I move around, there we go, that's our walk animation. This is our run animation, is jumping jacks. Let's say I want to save this setup so that when I log in next, I can automatically spawn as Romeo with all the animation swaps that I've applied. I can hit save it as whatever I want. Clearly I've done Romeo before, so I'll save it as Romeo 2. So when I next log in, I can just, and everything's reset, I can just quickly load Romeo 2, and everything will be back where it belongs. Also from this menu, you can find the file names for the path to add into an auto-transmog. So when you log in, it'll automatically load up this transmog with all the animation swaps that we've saved. So again, it'll be something like users, YourName, .runelite, creators, kit, Romeo 2. It'll look something like that. But yeah, you'll just have to find that through your file explorer. Again, that makes it so that when you next log in, it'll automatically apply this transmog, and you won't have to go through the hassle of setting it up all over again. Okay, that is pretty much all of the features that I want to show you for Creators Kit. Besides for a couple small additional handy things that I like to use. So first off, let's just disable our transmog. I don't want this. Disable our transmog. Let's put ourselves back on the map. In creating things, I often use a couple of different plugins for convenience. First off, when I want to get a very specific character look, I'll use the Fashionscape plugin. Very, very handy. It allows you to create outfits and save them for future use. Very useful also for getting a look to store or send to the Anvil versus, having to buy all those things yourself. So if I right-clicked, I stored my Verax set, and I can find it now over here, and there we go. So just very convenient for that. A couple other features. When I need to green screen, which I need to do fairly often, first off, I like to set the skybox to a lime green color and use the blindfold plugin with one feature checked off, which is show runelite objects. This will show only the runelite objects in the scene. One second. This will show only the runelite objects in the scene, which allows you to get a very clean image, which you can very easily remove the background of. So that's blindfold and skybox. Reset that. Other things, camera plugin is very useful for being able to get increased camera distance, whatever you call it. Increase zoom limits. There we go. Camera smoothing, also nice for being able to get a fairly smooth moving camera. Entity hider for hiding entities. And that's most of it. Roof removal as well for being able to toggle on and off roofs. That's another handy one. Yeah, that in short is Creator's Kit version 1.3 and all of its different features. I'm sure I forgot a couple things here or there, which I'll hopefully be able to fill you in on if you have any questions about it. So yeah, please do leave questions below. I do have a Discord server, which I use mostly just for managing support for my different plugins, which I will link below as well. I think that's it. Yeah. Well, hope you have a great day. If you have any questions, let me know.